of anything that you want to say to Cheryl? Or anything you want to say at all?
Hi guys, my name's Dawn, and if it's your first time here, welcome to Lounge Bar Crime. Now, the case that I'm going to go into today is the case of Jerry Michael Williams, who goes by the name of Mike Williams. So, if you've heard about this case before, which I know is a well-known case, still stick around, just refresh your memory on it, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the case, and then next week I'm going to do the unveiling of Denise Williams, just like I did with Nicole Kessinger, NK. I'm going to do a similar thing on Denise Williams because I think there's a lot to be said about her. Today I'm just going to concentrate and just give you the case for anybody that hasn't seen it. So let's get into it. On December 16th 2000, Mike Williams left his home in the early hours of the morning to go duck hunting on Lake Seminole. He went here all the time, fishing, duck hunting, but before he went, his wife asked him to promise that he'd be back for noon. It was the 6th wedding anniversary and they were going out that evening to celebrate. He promised her he would, and off he went. Lake Seminole is in the southern corners of Georgia, along the borders of Florida. This was Mike's favourite place to go duck hunting and fishing. He sometimes used to go before work in the mornings. However, this day, noon came and went, and Mike hadn't arrived home. Denise called her father to let him know that Mike hadn't returned, and she also called Mike's friend Brian Winchester. Brian Winchester and his father Marcus both went to Lake Seminole to see if they could find Mike. Once there, they spotted Mike's 1994 Ford Bronco, but there was no signs of Mike. All the Conservation Commission was told was that a hunter had gone missing. So depending on any incidents on the lakes, the Conservation Commission do handle each case differently. This is a hunter gone missing, so it became a search and rescue case. They searched to the early evening and still no signs of Mike. The very early hours of the following morning, Brian Winchester and his father Marcus decided to get out there again and have another search, and they came across his boat. Nothing in the boat to give any kind of indication of what might have happened. What the search and rescue team did then, they did what's called a grid search. To do that, they map out the lake. They basically have a long pole that they hit the floor of the lake with. If it's hit something solid, they just move on. They do say that if it's like a body or anything, it feels like a pillow. They covered approximately 5 acres, but still nothing. No signs of Mike, no signs of any of his equipment. What they then presumed was, because the days was going on, the weeks was going on, there was helicopters out there, friends, family, relatives, because they couldn't find any sign or any kind of indications of Mike still being on the lake. What they thought had happened was he'd hit a stump, fallen off the side of the boat, and because this lake, well, all the lakes around there were filled with alligators, they presumed that he'd fallen over and he'd been eaten by alligators. So let's just go back a little bit. So who was Mike Williams? Mike was born in 1969 and he grew up in Bradfordville, north of Tallahassee. He was the son of a Greyhound bus driver and a daycare provider. He had one other elder brother called Nick. Mike's family was well respected in the area. Now, as I've said, he come from a really hard working family. As I said, his father was a Greyhound bus driver and his mum was a daycare provider. Now, they saved really, really hard, but they didn't get anything fancy. They didn't buy a big fancy house, fancy cars, anything like that. They put all their money away for both Mike and Nick to go to North Florida Christian High School, which was also a well-respected school in the area, and they wanted the best for their lads. While attending high school, Mike met Denise Merrill. She was like his high school sweetheart. And Mike also had a friend called Kathy, and she was going out with Brian Winchester. So the four of them ended up, well, growing up together really. And once they left school, they were double dating. They just did everything together, the four of them. Mike started the duck hunting and fishing with his father at the age of 15. Once he'd left the North Florida Christian High School, he then went on to the Florida State University and he majored in political science and urban planning. And before he reached graduation, he was hired by the Ketchum Group as an appraiser. The company owner of the Ketchum Group later said he'd never seen anybody work as hard as Mike did. In 1994, Mike and Denise were married, and a few months later, Brian and Kathy got married also. And then in 1999, both Mike and Denise had a little girl called Ainsley, and a few months after that, Brian and Kathy had a little boy called Stafford. Due to Mike's career, Mike and Denise were soon moving up the ladder, and they moved to the east side of the city. It's said by this time Mike was earning around $200,000 a year. Also at this time, Brian Winchester, he was an insurance broker along with his father, Marcus Winchester. Now, around 1999, early 1999, Mike's father died suddenly. So Brian Winchester, knowing that Mike does quite a lot of dangerous sports, he advised Mike to get a better insurance policy because Mike's standard of living was quite high, and he was concerned that if anything did happen to him, you know, what would happen to his little girl or anything, and his wife. So he did decide to go with this policy with Brian Winchester and Marcus Winchester. He did also have a couple of other policies. One of them was due to expire anyway, so he just felt it was a good idea just to take out this one, and he increased the premium on it. Even though on the outside everything looked fine with Mike and Denise, Mike was actually concerned about the state of his marriage. He felt that there was something going on with Denise, and he did confide in Brian quite a few times that he felt she was having an affair or something. He was doing everything that he could. I mean, she would even call him while he was at work to say that she needed gas in her car, and he would leave work and jump in his car, go home, fill her car up for her, and then come back to work. He would go home from work and have something to eat and then go back to work. He would go in work at the weekends. He did everything to just give him a really, really good standard of living. But he was feeling as though his marriage was slipping away, and he really didn't know what to do. But on the 14th of December, Mike, Denise and Ainsley went to Mike's mum's, Cheryl Williams, where his brother lived as well at the time. Cheryl just felt everything was right because Denise was telling him that they were going to try for another child. Mike was really excited about this. Denise had also said that they were going to go on a family cruise as well. Cheryl was really, really pleased for him, and so Mike just held on in there, just thinking, right, everything seems fine. The anniversary's coming up, we're going to go out, we're going to celebrate. Let me just keep working at this and let's just see how we go. However, 2 days after this visit to Cheryl's home is when Mike goes missing duck hunting. The weeks and the months rolled on. By now, the search and rescue team had decided that they were reducing the amount of people they had on this case looking. They'd already stopped the helicopters. They'd reduced the men that was going round there. We were 44 days in now and still nothing. The weird thing about this though was that in the past, overall in them lakes, there'd been 80 other drowning cases, and every one of them turned up. The bodies turned up. Mike's 44 days in and nothing. Absolutely no sign of Mike at all. In February 2001, the search and rescue team came to Cheryl Williams and Mike's brother and Nick and said, we're going to stop the search. He's definitely been eaten by alligators. Nobody's been found. She said that I don't think that is on the lake. I think something's happened. He's not been eaten by alligators. I just know he hasn't. But Cheryl was a bit annoyed at Denise because Denise wasn't putting up any resistance at all. She was just, okay, she was just going with the flow, just stopping the search. I mean, this is her high school sweetheart, and she's just agreeing. She's just saying that she believes that they're right, that he has been eaten by alligators. But what actually came to light was they found out that Denise had actually put her insurance claim in 19 days after Mike had gone missing. In the state of Florida, if there's a missing person, the insurance won't pay, they won't declare him dead until after 5 years, and in some circumstances they might add another 3 years onto that. Denise was moving forward with this insurance claim and just saying, well, yeah, he's dead, he was eaten by alligators, and the judge wasn't having this, so she got an attorney to start working on this for her so that she could put the claim forward. Cheryl, on the other hand, couldn't understand why she was putting in this claim so soon. So this judge was not having any of it at all. He said, no, we need actual evidence that he's dead. Just before the insurance claim was to lapse, the one that was in place previously, a fisherman on Lake Seminole came across a pair of waders. There was nothing else with these waders, there was just these waders on their own. So obviously he pulled them out of the water, he's shown the search and rescue exactly where he found them. And then the next day, some other fishermen found Mike's jacket, a torch, and his fishing licence that was inside the jacket. The torch was still working as well, by the way. So these was all handed over to the police. So obviously with this evidence, Denise could put in for the insurance claim. So she gets in touch with her attorney again, and he goes back to the judge and says, here's all the evidence. And voila, there's his fishing licence with his ID. Like, what more do you want? The other thing though, at this time, Denise, there was actually 3 insurance policies. Denise never told the judge about this. She only told the judge about 1 insurance policy. So Denise got paid out approximately 1.75 million, and she started moving on with her life. In between hand, you've got Cheryl Williams, and she's walking through the town. She's been doing this all along, by the way. She's put billboards up, she's put posters up all over buildings, trees, everything. She's lobbying for something to be done and for the search to be put back on again. She wasn't really getting anywhere. Everybody was just, to be honest, I think a lot of people was just looking at her as though she was just stupid and just not accepting it, and it was like, oh, there's that woman again. But no, she was absolutely adamant that Mike was not in that lake at all. There was too many inconsistencies as well for Cheryl and for Nick, his brother. In 2004, Cheryl was still lobbying. She also wrote a 27-page letter of inconsistencies in the case and sent it to Florida law enforcement. Finally, Florida law enforcement decided, after reading this letter, that there was actually quite a few things in it that was inconsistent, and one of them was that alligators don't eat in cold water, and so it was impossible. She got evidence to say it was actually impossible that it could have been eaten by alligators. The water was that cold that the alligators at that time of the year and in that cold water would have just been concentrating on maintaining their body temperature. Another thing that was upsetting Cheryl Williams as well was that Brian Winchester and Kathy had divorced. Brian was now going out with Denise Williams. Obviously, Cheryl was not happy with this. She was still doing her lobbying. But then one day, out of the blue, Denise Williams and Brian Winchester turn up at Cheryl's home. They have an argument with Cheryl and Nick and tell them that they need to stop this lobbying, that Mike was dead and that she needed to get on with her life. And Cheryl had said to her, what if it was your son? And she said, I would move on with my life. In 2005, Brian Winchester and Denise Williams get married. Well, you can imagine how Cheryl feels. Also, at the same time, they have another go at Cheryl Williams again, and they tell her that she needs to stop this now with regards lobbying for her son, and if she didn't stop, that she would never see Ainsley again. Now, Ainsley was Mike's only child, so you can imagine Cheryl was absolutely devastated. But you know what? She didn't stop lobbying. She carried on. Now, even though in 2004 Florida law enforcement did decide to reopen this case, nothing had popped up. Still nothing was found. But Cheryl just carried on asking for any kind of information. If anybody's seen anything, just to come forward. During this time, Denise Williams and Brian Winchester, well, she's Denise Winchester now, kept Ainsley, Cheryl's granddaughter, away from her, and all away from Mike's family, Mike's brother. She didn't allow them to see them at all. Now you can see why I'm going to do an unveiling, can't you, of Denise Williams. So the years roll on. We now get to 2012. Obviously, they're all living in Mike's house that he worked so hard for, having a lovely time. They're travelling around the world, they're going on holidays, everything's brilliant, but then their marriage starts to fail. Brian is asked to leave the property. Well, Denise throws him out. They're separated. During this period, Brian's trying to contact Denise all the time. He's doing everything that he can to try and put the marriage back together. But Denise isn't having any of it. She's totally ignoring his messages. He's phoning her while she's at work. She's totally ignoring them. She's ignoring his text messages, everything. He's speaking to people and asking them to speak to her, but she totally blanks him out completely. So they're living separately now, Brian and Denise. In 2015, Denise starts to put in for a divorce. Brian is going absolutely off his head about this. The one thing he does not want is to divorce Denise, or Denise to divorce him. So he ups the pressure and does everything he can again to contact her to say, let's just speak about it, let's see what we can do. But she's not having it at all. August the 5th, 2016, Denise leaves home heading to work and gets into a car. She gets a minute or two down the road and she picks up a phone to speak to her sister on a mobile. And then this happens.
So I walked out of my house about 9:10. So then I pulled out on Mississippi Road. I was calling my sister, and this person starts climbing out of the very back, and I couldn't tell at first who it was, but then immediately I knew who it was, but I was screaming in the phone, help me. I didn't know if she had picked up yet or not. So I was screaming, help me, and then he grabbed the phone. So I don't know if he turned it off. I don't know how. I never saw the phone again. So then he goes, I'm going to effing hurt you if you don't, you turn here. And I kept going straight in. Pulled out a gun, like a gun, not a hunting gun, but like a gun that you would kill someone with. And he put it right here in my ribs.
Did you see what the gun looked like? Like what color it was, or?
I mean, it was dark. But it was like a handgun, I guess. I was crazed. And then as we were talking, I was just kind of agreeing with whatever he was saying. And I was like, I know that you love me. And I said, Brian, let me go to work. Let me go to work, show my face. People are going to wonder where I'm at. You call me at work, and then I'll come out and meet with you and your dad. I will not call the police, I promise. I promised a million times that I wouldn't call the police. And he said, I'm so sorry, and was crying. And I said, I know, and he turned right to head north.
So as you can see, after this incident, she does exactly what she said she wasn't going to do, and that was go to the police. She goes to the police, and quite a few of the officers in there that have been watching this case over the years, they've read everything Cheryl's had to say about this case. They go in one by one. One of them actually is a brother-in-law married to one of her sisters. He's trying to coax her into saying something, and she won't say anything. And then another officer goes in there. I'll let you see anyway.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Fine. We have never met. My name is Mike Levine. How you doing? Do you know that name at all?
No.
Okay. I'm with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Okay. I've literally known you, and I've known your family for many, 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 many years. Okay. The reason I say that is, I've been looking into Mike's disappearance. Okay. Literally dissected as much as I could about you, members of your family. I want to talk to you about a couple of things, and maybe you can fill in a couple of gaps for me. Can you do that for me?
I can try.
Okay. Obviously, the reason I'm here, I know about what happened today. Okay. And like the other officer said, it's going to have to sink in that today was going to be your last day. Please let that sink in. I mean, he didn't have sheets to sleep on, tonight or the night before or the night after. He had plastic and he had some other object. And what was that other object he had? Could you tell? Can you describe it?
It was, it was like maybe, it wasn't a hammer, but it was kind of that size and maybe wider. I have no idea what it was.
A small folding shovel?
No, it wasn't a shovel. It was like a long, I mean, it definitely wasn't a shovel, but it was about the length of like a hammer. But it seemed to be fatter the way that he grabbed it, but I have no idea.
When y'all were going towards CVS, it's what I could understand. He wanted to turn around and go the other way.
He kept saying go to the roundabout, and I think he was wanting me to go back, but I wasn't really listening. I wasn't really listening. I was just trying to get to CVS.
Where do you think Mike's buried at?
Oh, I have no idea.
Any speculation on that?
On where he's buried?
Buried.
I mean, I believe...
You don't really believe he died on the lake?
I do.
Why?
I just always have. That's what I believe. And I have, from when he was saying roundabout, I don't know, I talked with the last two people, and I can't remember if he wanted me to turn left or right.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh.
Why do you think Mike perished in the lake? Because he didn't die in Lake Seminole, okay?
That's what I've always believed, that's what I believe.
And why?
I've never been proven anything different.
Well, is there been any proof if he would have perished in that lake, he would have been found, okay? There's never been a person that has fallen over or whatever that they've never found except for Mike. I mean, that's literally, it's an impossibility that he died in that lake.
I guess that's just what I believe.
Really?
Yeah. But I guess right now, I need to focus on this and what happened this morning, and I want to get this restraining order done by 5 o'clock, and I want me and my daughter to be safe, and that's what I'm focused on.
There's no doubt that Brian's going to be located and put in jail. So I would imagine he's not going to immediately be bonded out under the circumstances and the crimes that he has committed. Okay?
I don't know. But
Kathy's ever talked about that?
I'd have to talk with her. But again, I want to focus on this. And if I understand that this is what you want to talk about.
Well, this thing today, is kind of a done deal. We know what happened. It's going to be verified in the video and all that. Whether Brian admits to what he did to you today, he did it.
Right.
And once they arrest him, I'm sure they're going to find some of the things that you talked about.
I hope so.
And that's kind of a done deal, okay? But obviously things have been building for a long time.
Well, we've been separated for a long time.
Yeah.
But for me, again, I want to file this restraining order before 3:30. Before 5. So I don't know. Yeah. It's 3:30 right now. I just want to make sure that I have time to do that.
So Detective Wilkerson is a little bit firmer with her, but she stands by her, her guns that she just wants to sort this out so that she gets protection. The one thing I don't understand is in this case, she's saying that she'll go to her sisters and her brother-in-law's because he's a policeman, but she's being offered a protective facility for her and her daughter, and she's not taking it up. Quite happy to get other people involved in all this. But yeah, this detective, he's being very pushy with her, but no, she's hanging on in there. She's not going to give anything away. She's here for this today, and that's it. So the next day, Brian Winchester was arrested and charged with kidnapping, domestic assault and armed burglary. So Denise then goes to court to give a victim statement, and she's asking the judge to give Brian Winchester life. But yeah, she wants Brian to stay in prison for the rest of his life.
Would you make a statement to the court, Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Amen.
Your Honor, I'm here today to ask you to sentence Brian Winchester to the maximum penalty under the law for the crimes that he committed against me on August the 5th, 2016. It's been 16 months since he broke into my car, hid in the back waiting on me, scared the life out of me. For all of these reasons, I'm asking you to sentence him to life in prison for the crimes he has committed. It comes down to my life or his, and I'm asking you, please, to choose mine. Thank you.
In court, Brian got 20 years for kidnapping, domestic assault and armed burglary. Just look at Brian Winchester's face there, looking at Denise while she's giving that statement. You can just tell he's looking at her and thinking, there's no way you're going to get away with this. No way. However, the next day, Mike Williams' body surfaces and not in the lake. It was evident from Mike's remains that he hadn't drowned and he had been murdered. So it's quite obvious that what had happened was Brian Winchester had done a plea deal in order to receive no extra time at all on top of his 20 years if he revealed Denise's involvement in the case. So in May 2018, after this case is still continuing, Denise is arrested at a place of work.
Do you have anything that you want to say to Cheryl? Or anything you want to say at all?
I don't know why Denise thought that she could have Brian Winchester over. There was no way. I mean, did she actually think that she was going to carry on living in this big house? By the way, they had another house as well, which is the house that Brian Winchester moved into when they separated. They had two properties. So did she actually think that she was just going to send him away for 20 years? The other thing was as well, during this time, she'd been sending messages to Kathy, because Kathy and Brian were still friends. She'd sent messages to Kathy to tell Marcus, to in turn tell Brian, his son, that she wasn't speaking during that time that she'd been to the police. So I'm not speaking, I'm just going to see if I can make sure that you get life, but I'm not speaking about the murders. I mean, what more can you get than life anyway? You know, so yeah, that's what she tried to do. And I know also that Kathy assisted the police. To be honest, I think they could have done a bit better there with her. I think they didn't give her the best questions to ask. She was doing covert calls to Denise Williams, Winchester, trying to get her to speak, because they stayed friends. And Denise wasn't really saying very much. She did drop herself in it here and there, but yeah, she didn't really give much away. Kathy did say about Marcus knowing the truth, and Denise did say, what did Marcus know? It also came to light as well that Denise and Brian Winchester had been having an affair since 1997, over 2 years previous to Mike's death. The other thing is as well that came to light is that Brian Winchester and his wife Kathy was having a threesome with Denise when they would go out of town for time away and things like that, whereas Mike wouldn't go because he was working and keeping her in the style that she felt entitled to. So yeah, I think, to be honest, I think Kathy could have come forward and said a few things a bit before. I think she actually knew something. I don't know if there was secretly a bit of a plea deal there and all with her, like, we could really drag you down with this unless you do this, that and the other. I'm not sure, but I think that she knew, because she was his alibi for where Brian was on the morning of the murder, and he was supposed to be in bed, which he wasn't. So he'd actually got up very early in the morning and gone and met Mike at Lake Seminole to commit the murder.
Little F, please. All right. Please introduce yourself to the jurors.
Brian Winchester,
And Mr. Winchester, how old are you?
48.
Mr. Winchester, do you know or did you know Mike Williams?
Yes, sir.
Prior to 2000, how did you know Mike Williams?
Mike and I went to high school together and got to know each other very well. We were very good friends. We continued to be friends all through college and all through our getting married, and the landing that we put in at. And we got to that area that I knew was a deep area, and I don't remember exactly how I got him to stand up, but I don't know if I pretended something was wrong with the motor or the weight in the boat was off or something, but I basically stopped the boat and got him to stand up, and when he did, I pushed him into the water. So he was in the water, and he was like struggling, and the motor of the boat was still running, and I pulled off just a little bit to get kind of away from him so that he couldn't reach back into the boat. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know if he was trying to swim, or I didn't know what was going on, but what I came to find out, or eventually realized, was he was taking the waders and the jacket off. And he swam over to one of those stumps and held on to it. And he was panicking, and I was panicking, and none of this was like going well. I thought it was going to go. And I didn't know what to do. But he started to yell. And I didn't know how to get out of that situation. And so I had my gun in the boat. And so I loaded my gun, and I made one or two circles around, and I ended up circling closer towards him, and he was in the water, and as I passed by, I shot him.
Where did you shoot him?
In the head.
I mean, the other thing that makes me laugh about this case as well is Brian Winchester crying when they ask about how did you know them? Like he's got some kind of remorse and everything. How can you have remorse after like 17 years and you've been, you was doing his wife before, you was doing her afterwards, you married her, you kept his daughter away from his mother, you lived in his home, so don't act like there's any regret. The only regret was that he didn't get away with it, and Denise was throwing him right under the bus. So they deserved each other in that case. The other thing Brian was concerned about as well, the reason why he didn't want to get a divorce, was because while he was married to Denise, she couldn't be a witness against him in, say, the case of Mike Williams. So it makes you wonder why she wanted to get a divorce, so that she could be a witness against him. The other thing is, this divorce thing, she gave excuses that she didn't just divorce Mike and go off with Brian because she was bothered about appearances, and she didn't want it to look bad on friends and family because of her religion, her Christianity and all this. But yet by the time it got to divorcing Brian, she'd overcome all that. She was fine divorcing Brian. It was just Mike that she couldn't divorce. Denise appeals because she wasn't actually there when the crime was committed, and she wants the murder charge taken off. They do go with this and reduce it to conspiracy to murder, but they still keep the sentence of 30 years as at 30 years. I mean, when she was appealing this, she was saying how good she is in... this is her appeal. She conspired to murder her husband. What does it matter that she's teaching people to read and write? Anyway, it didn't get her anywhere.
I begged Fish and Game to do a criminal investigation. They told me Mike drowned and got eaten by alligators, and there was no need for an investigation. They laughed at me and called me crazy. 9 months after Mike disappeared, his wife, Denise, told me if I continued to seek a criminal investigation, I would lose Ansley, my granddaughter, Mike's only child.
Poor Cheryl has still never seen her granddaughter Ainsley, Mike's only daughter.
Further, Mr. Fuchs?
No, Your Honor, as the court has mentioned, that there's not a whole lot of discretion with the court. The state concurs with the recommendation of the PSI, which is that Ms. Williams be sentenced to life imprisonment on count number 2 and 30 years in the Department of Corrections on count number 1. And we would agree with that recommendation, Your Honor.
Okay. Come forward with your client, please, Mr. White. Based upon the jury verdict in this case, Ms. Williams, I do adjudicate you guilty of counts 1 and 2. On count 1, I sentence you to 30 years, Department of Corrections. On count 2, I sentence you to life in prison. Those sentences run concurrently. Give you credit of 275 days against each sentence.
Your Honor.
Anything else from either side?
Nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
Nothing from state, Your Honor.
All right. Good luck to you, ma'am. You'll need to step over here with the bailiff.
We've done that, Your Honor.
Okay, taking care of it.
Yes.
All right.
So I am going to do an unveiling on Denise Williams. Yeah, just like I did on NK, and I'm going to go all the way through it, and that's going to be up next week. Definitely. Okay. All right, so thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you give it a like. See you next week. In between, and goodbye, stay safe, and come back. Bye.